Well, it's just not a Chelsea transfer window unless we've lowballed someone as it. Welcome, Blue Believers, to another episode of the Stamford Sync, where we are syncing up with everything Chelsea FC. I'm your host, Matt, and I hope you're all having a fine, lovely, relaxing Sunday morning. If you do enjoy the content and want to see more, please do me the distinct honour of liking, sharing, and subscribing, or just roast me in the comments, whatever gets you through your day. So before we get into today's transfer news, we're going to talk a little bit about the international match that happened last night. England played Andorra in a World Cup qualifying stage, and it was nice to see 3 Chelsea players in the starting lineup. Chelsea haven't had a massive foothold in the international team for a while, so it's great to see some of Chelsea's young superstars lining up to represent their country. So we had Cole Palmer starting in the centre of attack, we had Noni starting on the left, which I found interesting, and Reece James, what initially looked at left back, which was a bit like, ooh, what are we doing? But it actually ultimately turned out to be a lot more like how Chelsea play. Reece James was basically that left centre-back role. So Thomas Tuchel is the manager of England and obviously ex-Chelsea manager. So it's no surprise to see people like Reece James in the lineup when they won the Champions League together. But that seems to be largely where the good news ends. So the game was not exactly a rip-roaring affair, right? It was a bit dead, truth be told. We didn't look fantastic, especially considering the evident gap in quality between the Andorra team and the England team. We did end up coming away with a 1-0 win, largely thanks to superstar striker Harry Kane. But you've got to sit and wonder, how long can we rely on Harry Kane to bail us out of games against teams like Andorra without the rest of the team really putting the work in? So as far as the Chelsea stars, Reece James did just fine. Reece James is obviously a very capable defender. As far as him playing, in that kind of left centre-back role goes, it works. He's kind of been playing a similar role for the Chelsea team on the other side of the back three for Enzo Maresca, inverting a little bit into midfield, but a lot less towards the end of the season. So Reece James did fine. Should he be able to stay fit, which is always the question with Reece James, you would have to imagine that he is probably going to be one of the first names on Tommy Tuchel's sheet every time. Cole Palmer continued his recent trend of flattering to deceive. Really unfortunate seeing as how well he played in the Euros, but obviously that was in that time where everything he was just kind of touching was turning to gold. He does seem to still be under this cloud of uncertainty within himself, and that was kind of evident on the pitch yesterday. He looked like he was struggling to make things happen. It's just a hard one with Cole Palmer, isn't it? Because you know what's there, and obviously he's just really stuck inside his own head at the moment. But I guess what that kind of says is it's not strictly a Maresca tactical thing either, because he is struggling, with the litany of unbelievable England talent he had around him yesterday. He is still struggling a little bit. So there's positives and negatives in that. It's the negatives obviously being Cole Palmer isn't the Cole Palmer we have seen and want to carry on seeing. But the positive is that it's something that's in himself, right? So if he can get over this kind of mental block that he's in, then maybe we can get that back, and you wouldn't necessarily have to attribute it to Maresca's kind of management or tactics, or even necessarily the team around him. So bit of a balanced one there. And finally, Madueke, right? Oh, mate, Madueke, what's going on? Madueke looked absolutely unbelievable and did walk away with England's player of the match. So obviously recently, we've been talking about a lot on this channel. Madueke seems to be one of the potential casualties. If we're going to be looking to sell people, Madueke looks like one of the ones we're going to get rid of. And it makes sense. He's young. He'd probably command a lot of money. There's, kind of talks about Newcastle being interested in him. And that's terrifying to me. I think Madueke in a Newcastle shirt would probably terrify the Premier League and leave us with a huge omelette of eggs on our faces. He was out on the left, but he just looked so good, didn't he? He was sparkly, absolutely positively sparkly. He was all over the place, desperately always trying to make things happen. It's we haven't really even seen Madueke. I mean, it was Andorra. Let's preface the rest of this conversation with the fact that it was against Andorra, so we shouldn't get super, super excited. But at the same time, it was amazing to see Madueke just so up for it, right? It's even on the left wing, being obviously he's quite a heavily left-footed player. He's not exactly two-footed, but he just really, really looked like he was trying to make things happen all the time. It makes the decision to think about selling Madueke look a little bit scarier, doesn't it? If that kind of energy is something that can be tapped into, where he's been, he looked like he was given a bit of freedom yesterday as well, to be fair. I guess the difference between that is Maresca's system requires him to hug the byline quite closely and, put crosses in and stuff. But yesterday he was just really, running in, constantly running in, cutting in, always looking really dangerous as well. If you've watched any of my content before, you would know that I am a Madueke fan. I even like the fact that he's got a bit of ego about him, right? It's not just... it's not even just the way he plays. I think that, some of the best players in the world have enormous egos, and being able to channel that ego properly is really, really important. I don't think Madueke's a million miles away from discovering what kind of player he can be, bearing in mind he is still really young. Even we've had him a few years now, so he doesn't feel like he's one of the young ones. Do you know what I mean? But Madueke, there's definitely something there. And the right manager will unlock that. And that's a terrifying prospect if we end up selling him. If we make a good amount of money off of him, that will, of course, soften the blow. And ultimately, if he doesn't fit into the team that we're trying to build, then he doesn't fit into the team that we're trying to build. It doesn't matter how good he is if he's not going to be good in the system and the team with the players around him that Chelsea are trying to create. But either way, if I get to continue watching Noni Madueke do well for England, as an England supporter and a Chelsea supporter, I guess it's not the end of the world, because I will still be able to support the guy. So overall, international stuff, good to see so many Chelsea players representing the England first team, but disappointing to see Cole Palmer stuck in the same kind of, muddy waters that he's been trapped in for a little while. Reece James just looking like a reasonable Reece James, even though it was in a slightly unfamiliar position. And great to see Noni Madueke play so well, but a bit scary at the same time, because you got to think that's another one of those performances that will just put his stock up when it, people will be like, will have seen that game and been like, oh, maybe let's go in for that guy. So maybe this actually helps push Noni Madueke out the door, because he'll be feeling really good in himself, and maybe that's giving him some confidence. And if an Eddie Howe comes in and says, come and play for my team, we're going to be amazing, then you've got to think he'd probably likely agitate for that move as well. Right, so transfers. No new names, but more information on names that we have currently talked about. Chelsea have put in a bid, if all is to be believed. Chelsea have put in a bid for Mike Maignan, the goalkeeper. It is very slightly higher than what they were talking about initially, but still not high enough to match AC Milan's valuation of the player. Supposedly we've put in a €15 million bid, which is somewhere just above £10 million, probably close to 12, which is more than the 8 we were talking about before. AC Milan won €30 million, £25 million. Chelsea are still quite steadfast on, initially it was like, I say initially, this is still the case, that, we said, you've got till Monday to accept this bid and accept this offer and this and that and the other. Mike Maignan wants to come to Chelsea. That much seems to be pretty clear. But it now really comes down to whether AC Milan are willing to lose him for half of what they wanted for him. Bearing in mind, he does still have a year left on his contract, and should this not go well, although he might play for AC Milan for the upcoming season, he'll maybe be less likely to sign a deal, so they could lose him on a free. So I guess that is what they've kind of got to weigh up at the moment, isn't it? Do we sell Maignan now because he wants this move, or do we risk keeping him and losing him for free in a year when we could have reinvested that money that we get from him right now in another goalkeeper for the upcoming season? The big news seems to be about Jamie Gittens. So I have been desperately trying to manifest Nico Williams. Truth for the fact is, if recent news is to be believed, he is not interested in a move outside of Spain. The glimmering lights of Chelsea and Arsenal in London are supposedly not shiny enough for him to consider swapping the weather, right? Like the amazing sunny weather in Spain for the morbid, dreary, grey dampness that is the UK's capital. It looks like Jamie Gittens has agreed personal terms with Chelsea, which is a good thing. We look to be wanting to sign him on a 7-year deal, which is what we do with players now, isn't it? We want to lock them up for life. You got to think like that, a 7-year deal, he's 20, that takes him to 27. That would be him in his peak, obviously, depending on how things go. It's just about protecting assets at the end of the day, isn't it? Spreading the money out and protecting assets. But Jamie Gittens has agreed to a 7-year deal. So whilst all of that seems positive, apparently, per Fabrizio Romano, the football guru that we all wait for with bated breath to give us any morsel of news, because he seems to be the guy that knows, has indicated that we have only offered 35 million euros, which is in and around 30 million pounds. They wanted, I mean, I think he had a release clause for 50 mil. So we're trying to lowball them, because that's, we can't just go in and, we'll spend 70 mil on Mudryk, but we, after that, we're just going to lowball people for players that do seem a little bit more interesting. So yeah, 35 million euros, 30 million pounds, a fair chunk less than the 50 that they are interested in for selling the player. Supposedly, we have tried to incorporate a 10% sell-on clause with that. So if we sell Gittens for 100 mil in the future, they'll get 10 mil. And you've got to think, supposedly they've rejected this, by the way, and that kind of makes sense, doesn't it? Because in the crazy scenario that in the future we sell him for 100 mil, that means they get an extra 10 mil, which ultimately doesn't even, combined with the fee that we're looking at giving them now, doesn't even take them up to the 50 that they initially wanted. So I guess it's just a strange one, isn't it? Because we are, we want to get him in for the Club World Cup, which is, this window closes in like 2 days. Do you know what I mean? So it's going to be fast and furious for the next couple of days for the negotiating parties. But it just seems like it seems quite low to go in with, doesn't it? So they're going to say no. If they haven't already, they are absolutely going to say no to this deal, because it doesn't even come close to, maybe if we up the sell-on clause, which I don't suppose that we would. What is more likely is we probably up that to 40 mil with a 10% sell-on clause, and that. No, that's based on selling him for 100 mil. Do you know what I mean? So maybe if it's 40 mil and a 15% sell-on clause, I don't know, something like that. Maybe that gets a little bit closer, but they're not in a massive bind to sell him, I don't think. Do you know what I mean? He's got a bit of time left on his contract. I guess it is largely for them about he's had a good enough recent few seasons to command this kind of money, and if things do fall off, then maybe this is, it's pretty good money. Do you know what I mean? For a player they didn't pay very much for in the first place, because ultimately he's been with their youth team and then moved into their first team. Do you know what I mean? It's not like they bought him for like loads of money from somewhere. They got him as a Man City academy graduate. So even 30 mil, is still basically pure book money for them. And I know that we over here in England, we love book money and financials and PSR, and we love talking about all the really sexy financial stuff in football, but it doesn't seem to be the similar sort of thing over in Germany, does it? So, but ultimately, book money is book money. I would imagine that they probably do things the same way that we do over here, and they want to make a little bit of money for Jamie Gittens. We want Jamie Gittens. Okay, ultimately, I'm sort of starting to ramble now, but ultimately, it seems like this is the next odds-on winger, right? So, the talks of Rodrigo and Nico Williams are probably going to fade into obscurity, because it looks like Jamie Gittens is going to be the guy. And I'm okay with that, right? I'm okay with that. I think that to have him at 20 years old, and the thing is always like, okay, he came from the Bundesliga, right? He came from the Bundesliga. He's scored a reasonable good amount of goals for a winger in the Bundesliga. But that isn't necessarily going to translate over here, as we have seen many times with your Kai Havertz, your Timo Werner, and kind of Jadon Sancho as well. Although we didn't directly get him from the Bundesliga, that's where he did his best, and he hasn't translated that over here. There is history to say that that's not necessarily going to happen, but I do think also because he's that bit younger, there's a lot more potential, right? There's a lot more potential. So we'll just have to see how this one goes. I would like to see, I'd be happy to see Jamie Gittens in a Chelsea shirt. I just want someone that we've brought in to look at locking down that position, kind of like we were hoping Mykhailo Mudryk was going to do. And obviously that one never panned out. But I feel more confident in Jamie Gittens than I did in Mykhailo Mudryk, right? Because obviously coming from Germany and coming from Ukraine are two completely different things. No one's coming out and saying Jamie Gittens is a Ballon d'Or winner, which is, the kind of noise we were getting about Mudryk when we bought him. But at the same time, the levels are different. Do you know what I mean? There's probably even more of a gap between the Ukraine League and the Bundesliga than there is between the Bundesliga and the Premier League. So just based on our recent crazy transfer history, I do feel a bit more confident in the idea that Jamie Gittens would do a better job than Mykhailo Mudryk, at least. And there's other stuff as well, isn't it? Like, he's English, so it's not like he needs to come in and bed into the culture. Obviously, he's been away with Germany for a while, but he's a young English lad. And the culture and, that move, I was talking about it with Esteval Willian the other day. Do you know what I mean? Like, coming from Brazil at 18 is so much more than being about just getting on the pitch and playing football. There's like a whole new culture, the weather change. Do you know what I mean? There's so much more to consider than just how good is he on a football pitch, because you need to be good in your life and then you can be good on a football pitch. So, there's a couple of players, isn't there? A couple from Man City actually ring a bell. I remember Jesus Navas and Nolito, I think his name was. There was like a winger who had an absolutely unbelievable season in Spain and came over, and these guys, although they looked excellent in their respective leagues, they never settled in England, and that made things really difficult for them to go out and be good on the pitch. Another example being Cesc Fabregas, right? So Cesc Fabregas is a Spanish guy, but he obviously applied all of his trade at Arsenal for a really long time, and embedded into the English culture, went over to Barcelona for a while, and when he came back here, he slotted straight in. Do you know what I mean? We bought him, and it was like he was on the pitch like a week later. Not just because, I'm not comparing Gittens to Fabregas in terms of player. Fabregas is one of my favourite players ever. He was unbelievable. But knowing that culture and being comfortable in that kind of area is a really, really important thing. So it's just something that bears thinking about. Do you know what I mean? Jamie Gittens could easily be more successful than Mykhailo Mudryk, because not only has he had a good season abroad, coming back here isn't going to be a massive culture shock for him. He hasn't got to learn a new language. He doesn't have to get used to the food or be shocked by how different the weather is. Do you know what I mean? It's like all of these things that can affect a player's day-to-day life that might affect how they play on the pitch aren't really going to be a problem, because Jamie Gittens is a young English lad and he knows the score already. So a little summary of today's news. International stuff. 3 Chelsea players in the team. Wicked. Only one of them did very well, and it's one of them that we're probably going to sell. Not so wicked. Mike Maignan deal looks to be progressing. It really now squarely falls in the hands of AC Milan. We have upped our bid from what our initial rumblings were about. The word is that we want to get this one over the line and have him for the Club World Cup. I am still a proponent of give Petrovic a shot to play in the Club World Cup. Let's see how he works in a Chelsea shirt and see if that's, because I do think the upcoming season is more important than the Club World Cup, but there is a lot of money on the line, so that's a tough one. But ultimately, Maignan is progressing one way or the other. In the next day or two, we will know whether that's going to happen. And Jamie Gittens, we're lowballing him. That probably just indicates that we're at the start of the negotiating phase. I mean, no one really thought that Dortmund were going to sell him for that, did they? I don't know how many offers they've got coming in for him from elsewhere, but Jamie Gittens isn't the Nico Williams figure that I wanted to see, but I do think he looks like a good prospect. And as I've just kind of been saying, I do think there are other non-footballing reasons to suggest why it might be easier for him to settle in our team than it would be if we got, when we got Mykhailo Mudryk, or if we went out and got a Nico Williams and stuff like that. So that's it for today's video, guys. Keep it locked. I will be keeping one ear on the ground for any more news that comes out. Please, let's start generating some conversation, man. My subscriber base is slowly ticking up. I'm really, really happy to see all of you guys. Welcome to the channel. Let's hope you are the OGs of what is to be many in the future. But let's start generating some conversation. Talk to me in the comments. Tell me your theories, your opinions. Tell me if you think I'm wrong. Educate me if needs be. I'm absolutely up for football's such a massive subject, and there's so many different sources and news that comes out from everywhere. But ultimately, what a lot of it comes down to is opinion, and I want to know about yours. Let's start talking about what you guys think about all of these players I'm talking about, the squad, my opinions, whether you agree with me or not. None of it is irrelevant, right? All of it is relevant. Let's have some fun talking about football with each other, right? That's kind of what I'm here for. There will probably be a lot more news over the next few days, a bit more concrete, because that window is going to slam shut either on or at the end of the 10th of June. And then we have a week preparation for the Club World Cup, right? So like I said in my video yesterday, I am going to start doing a little bit more different content. We're going to be looking at match previews, lineups, maybe taking a little look at some of the other teams we might be playing and what interesting players they have too. So keep it locked. Have a wonderful day. I've been Matt. This has been the Stamford Sync. I will see you guys very soon. Peace.